begins with a quiet evening on Earth, the kind of evening where everything seems normal. People are finishing their work, families are having dinner, and the world is moving in its usual rhythm. But far above the planet, in the deep silence of space, something is happening that no one on Earth knows about. A small trader ship, old and worn out, is drifting near the outer edge of known space. Its captain discovers a strange encrypted transmission, something he has never come across before. He doesn't understand it, but he senses that it is dangerous. Out of fear and curiosity, he forwards the message to the only place he thinks might understand it, Earth. When the transmission reaches Earth's communication center, the officers on duty are confused. The message looks damaged, full of distortions and broken signals, as if someone tried to hide it. It takes hours of decoding, but when the final image appears on the screen, everyone in the room freezes. The transmission shows the last moments of Earth's Envoy, its only representative allowed inside the Galactic Council. The Envoy is standing in front of a panel of alien leaders. The recording is blurry, but one thing is clear. He's being judged, but not fairly. There is panic in his voice, as if he's trying to explain something. Then the image cuts, and everyone sees the Envoy collapsing. The room fills with shocked gasps. Nobody speaks. Nobody knows how to process what they have just watched. The director of the communication center immediately alerts Earth's leaders. Within minutes, an emergency meeting is called. This is not the kind of meeting where people sit calmly around a table. The atmosphere is heavy, tense, and cold. Some leaders are pacing around. Others are staring silently at the blank wall, trying to make sense of the situation. They watch the transmission several times, searching for context, looking for any clue that explains why this happened. But the video remains the same, confusing, incomplete, and terrifying. For years, relations between humans and the Galactic Council had been fragile. Many species saw humans as newcomers, unpredictable, and too ambitious. Earth tried its best to fit in, sending diplomats, sharing technology, participating in joint missions. But still, there were moments of clear bias. Some council members always voted against human proposals, no matter how logical they were. Others acted friendly in meetings, but spoke against Earth behind closed doors. Humans noticed these things, but they hoped that time would heal the differences. Now, watching the transmission, the hope begins to fade. Earth's leaders sit in silence for a long moment. Finally, one of them breaks it. He calmly asks if there is any possibility the transmission is fake. The analysts double-check everything: the signal origin, the encoded layers, the energy patterns. Every test leads to the same conclusion: it's real. There is no sign of tampering. The Envoy is gone, and the Galactic Council didn't even send a message to inform Earth. They kept it hidden. This realization shocks everyone. It is not just the act, it is the secrecy. If the Council truly believed the Envoy had done something wrong, they should have contacted Earth. But they did not. They buried the truth. That silence says more than any explanation could. The room fills with a mix of emotions: anger, grief, fear. Some leaders worry that reacting too strongly could push the galaxy into conflict. Others feel that staying silent would make Earth look weak. But no matter what each person thinks, everyone agrees on one point: the people of Earth cannot be told yet. The truth is too heavy, and panic would spread too quickly. Outside the secure building where the meeting is taking place, Earth continues to move as if nothing has happened. Streets remain crowded, screens continue showing entertainment, and ordinary families enjoy their peaceful night. They have no idea that their world has just changed. They have no idea that their envoy, the person who carried Earth's hopes, will never return. Inside the meeting room, the discussion takes a new turn. The leaders begin asking deeper questions. Why did the Council act like this? What did they fear? What pushed them to such an extreme decision? A strategist suggests that maybe the Council felt threatened by Earth's rapid progress. Over the last decade, humans developed technologies faster than anyone expected. They mastered long-distance travel, built advanced defense systems, and even created peaceful alliances with smaller alien species who trusted Earth more than the Council. Perhaps some powerful factions saw this growth as a challenge to their influence. Another theory emerges, that something happened at the Council meeting that Earth hasn't been told about. Maybe the Envoy uncovered information that frightened the Council members. Maybe he confronted them. Maybe he found evidence of something they wanted to hide. Without the missing parts of the recording, everything feels like speculation. Still, the leaders know one thing. The Council will never admit what truly happened. They might release a statement later, filled with formal words and excuses. But it will not reflect the truth of the Envoy's final moments. Earth must decide what to do next. Senior advisor points out that the Galactic Council has always underestimated humans. They think Earth is emotional, unpredictable, and too young to be taken seriously. If Earth reacts with anger, the Council will claim they were right. But if Earth stays silent, the Council will take it as submission. There has to be a middle path, something that shows strength without recklessness. Slowly, a plan begins to form, not a plan of revenge, but a plan of caution in preparation. Earth needs to understand what truly happened, gather more information, and quietly prepare for whatever may come. Because if the Council is capable of hiding something this serious, then nobody knows what they might do next. While the leaders discuss, the analysts continue to study the transmission. One of them notices something strange: background audio, very faint, almost impossible to hear. After several rounds of enhancement, a small part becomes clear. It sounds like someone shouting in the distance, followed by hurried footsteps and a loud alarm. Then silence. The room feels colder after hearing this. It suggests that the Envoy's final moments were chaotic, not organized like an official procedure. Something unpredictable happened. Hours pass. The Earth outside moves into night. The leaders stay inside the secure building, drinking cold coffee, reviewing every detail again and again. The weight of responsibility sits on their shoulders. They are not thinking like politicians now. They are thinking like guardians trying to protect billions of people. By early morning, they reach a decision. Earth will not confront the Council immediately. Instead, a classified directive is issued. It instructs all key stations, research centers, and border outposts to shift into an early alert posture. Not war, not aggression, just readiness. Only a limited group of people know why. The classified directive moves through secure channels like a silent ripple. In distant research facilities, lights turn on as scientists begin checking systems that haven't been touched for years. At border patrol stations near the solar boundary, officers tighten their surveillance. Nobody knows the full picture, but everyone senses that something serious is happening. Meanwhile, the analyst team tries to trace the original source of the transmission. If the trader ship found it, then someone else may have seen it too. They search for any signs that the Council tried to block the signal. The deeper they dig, the more they realize that the Council does not want this truth to spread. Several regions of space show signs of artificial signal interference, as if someone attempted to stop the message from reaching certain systems. The leaders watch this new evidence with growing concern. This is no small matter. It means the Council not only executed the Envoy, but also tried to ensure no one ever found out. The silence is intentional. The secrecy is calculated. And the implications are large. As dawn breaks over Earth, the leaders look out at the pale sunlight. They understand that they cannot reverse what happened, but they can prepare for what is coming. The question is not whether the galaxy will react, it is how Earth will respond. For now, everyone decides to keep the truth hidden from the public. People need stability. People need routine, and Earth needs time. The recording of the Envoy plays one last time on the screen. No one speaks. The image flickers, blurs, and then disappears. The leaders stand up one by one, exhausted but determined. The world outside remains unaware, but a silent shift has already begun. Earth has taken its first step toward a path it never wanted to walk. Begins deep inside the main hall of the Galactic Council, a place that most humans have never seen except in old broadcasts. The hall is enormous, shaped like a circle so that every species feels equal, at least in theory. But today, the atmosphere's anything but equal. The council members sit in their seats, looking restless, shifting, whispering, avoiding each other's eyes. They all know the same thing. Something has gone terribly wrong, and the consequences are growing faster than they expected. The council chamber is supposed to represent peace and fairness. Every corner of the hall glows with soft white lights, and the center floor has a transparent surface that shows stars beneath it, as if reminding everyone that the galaxy is shared. But today, the lights feel too bright, and the stars beneath the glass look more like distant warnings than symbols of unity. The session begins with the council leader asking for silence. His voice trembles slightly, even though he tries to hide it. He announces that an unauthorized transmission has leaked beyond the council's territory. He doesn't say where it went, but everyone understands it reached Earth. The truth they wanted to keep hidden has escaped their control. Before he can continue, several representatives begin speaking at the same time. Some argue that the situation is manageable, while others insist that Earth will never stay silent after discovering what happened. One member, tired and frustrated, asks if it was truly necessary to act in such a harsh way toward the Envoy. At this, the chamber goes quiet, as if everyone has been caught off guard by a truth they were avoiding. A representative from a technologically advanced species rises and says the Envoy posed a threat. His tone is firm, but his eyes dart around nervously. He tries to explain that the Envoy crossed boundaries, violated protocols, and carried information that could destabilize several regions. But when someone asks for exact evidence, he dodges the question, mumbling something about confidentiality and unfinished reports. Another council member, from a peaceful and soft-spoken species, raises concern that the Envoy was never given a fair hearing. She reminds the room that Earth had followed every rule, attended every meeting, and made genuine efforts to build trust. She says the sudden action against the Envoy was hasty and driven by fear rather than logic. Others nod silently, but none speak up directly. They do not want to take a side yet. The leader of the council tries to calm everyone. He taps the table gently and says the decision was made after careful consideration. But his words feel empty, even to himself. Several members exchange glances, noticing how he avoids details. Deep down, many of them know the truth. The decision wasn't careful at all. It was rushed, emotional, and influenced by a few powerful factions who feared Earth's rise in influence. A representative from a distant sector, known for strict laws and zero-tolerance policies, speaks boldly. He says humans have always been unpredictable. He argues that Earth's rapid progress in only a few decades is unnatural and suspicious. He claims the Envoy might have been hiding something, but when questioned further, he has nothing solid to offer, only assumptions and personal bias. Another member points out that even if the Envoy had done something wrong, due process should have been followed. The Council has always taken pride in its fair treatment of all species, big or small. But now, by acting in secrecy and refusing to explain themselves, they have broken their own code. This comment leaves the room in heavy silence. Everyone feels the weight of it. The Council can sense the cracks forming, not only between them and Earth, but among themselves. A smaller representative from a species known for honesty hesitantly raises his voice. He reveals that he personally received no official briefing before the incident. He says that a small inner circle made the decision alone and then announced it to everyone else afterward. This shocks several members, who realize they too were kept in the dark. The room grows tense, and the confusion becomes more obvious by the second. One member demands to know who gave the final order. Another insists that the council review the full recording of the Envoy's final session. Another asks if there were warnings or threats involved that the rest of them were never told about. The leader stalls, saying the matter is complicated, but his hesitation exposes that the truth is being hidden behind all the noise. A quiet truth sits unspoken. Some of them regret what happened. Others fear the consequences. A few still believe it was necessary. But almost everyone agrees that the situation is slipping out of control. Someone brings up Earth's likely reaction. They describe humans as emotional but strategic. Another representative interrupts, saying humans are not the same as they were decades ago. Their technology has improved at alarming speed. Their ships are more advanced. Their borders are better protected. Their alliances with smaller species are growing. The Council's decision may have triggered the worst possible outcome. One of the senior council members, older and wiser, speaks in a low voice that forces the room to quiet down. He says that the Council has underestimated Earth more times than he can count. He says humans are patient, but when pushed too far, they act decisively. He believes the Envoy's disappearance will not be ignored. He warns them that Earth may stop trusting the Council entirely. This makes the hall even more uneasy. A few members try to reassure themselves, saying Earth will seek answers rather than conflict. Others shake their heads, saying Earth has always been firm about the safety of its people. They will not let something like this go unanswered. The leader calls for a short break. Groups of representatives gather in small circles, whispering and arguing quietly. Some want to reveal the truth to Earth, hoping honesty will calm the situation. Others strongly oppose this idea, fearing legal and political consequences within the Council. A few argue that the truth is too dangerous and must never surface. Inside one of the side chambers, a small group of high-ranking officials meet privately. This group includes some of the individuals who made the original decision. Their expressions are tight, heavy, almost guilty. They discuss the situation in hushed voices, acknowledging that hiding the recording was a mistake. They fear that if Earth uncovers more pieces of the truth, the Council's reputation will fall apart. But even within this small group, disagreements appear. One official insists that they acted to protect the galaxy, claiming the Envoy asked questions that made several species uncomfortable. Another says the Envoy discovered information that could shift power in unexpected ways. But when pressed for details, he avoids giving specifics, saying it's better not to reveal everything. The group argues quietly but intensely. They blame each other, accuse each other, and try to shift responsibility. Fear becomes the dominant emotion. They are not afraid of Earth's ships or weapons. They are afraid of Earth's response. The galaxy has seen Earth change quickly, and no one knows what they will do next. Back in the main chamber, the leader reconvenes the session. His tone is firmer now, but still uncertain. He announces that the Council will prepare a public statement for all member species. The statement will describe the Envoy's death as an unfortunate and unavoidable event. It will not mention the secrecy, the rushed decisions, or the internal disagreements. It will be a carefully shaped message designed to protect the Council's image. As soon as he finishes speaking, several representatives object. They say the statement will cause more problems. They argue that Earth will not accept a vague explanation. They demand transparency. But the leader refuses to change his position. He insists that the Council must appear united, even if it is not. This sparks fresh arguments. Voices rise. Leaders from powerful sectors demand control. Others demand honesty. The once peaceful chamber becomes a storm of confusion. The council members, who are supposed to guide the galaxy, now look lost and divided. At one point, a representative from a small species stands up. With a shaky voice, he says something that silences the room. If Earth loses trust in the council, many others will follow. His words settle into everyone's mind like a stone dropped into deep water. They all know he is right. Earth has friendships with several smaller species who have always felt overlooked by the council. If Earth breaks away, those species might too. The balance of the galaxy could shift. The meeting ends with no real resolution. The only thing the council agrees on is to delay any direct communication with Earth until they organize the facts. In truth, they are buying time to hide, time to prepare, time to hope the situation does not spiral further. As the council members leave the chamber, the room feels heavier than before. The glowing lights shine on empty seats, and the stars beneath the glass floor seem distant and cold. The council was meant to be the heart of order and fairness, but today it feels like a place full of uncertainty and fear. Far away, Earth remains silent. But its silence is beginning to feel like a warning, and in the back of many minds, a new fear begins to grow. The Envoy's death might only be the beginning of something much larger. Begins with Earth standing on the edge of a silence that feels heavier than any war. After the leaders finished their long emergency meeting, they returned to their offices, but none of them slept. The image of the Envoy's last moments stayed in their minds like a weight they couldn't lift. They knew the galaxy had changed, and now Earth had to change with it. Not by shouting, not by threatening, but by preparing quietly, carefully, and without making the rest of humanity panic. Before sunrise, a series of encrypted messages began moving across the planet. These messages were not loud announcements or public broadcasts. They were small, precise signals sent to specific bases, research stations, and command centers. The people receiving them didn't know everything, but they understood enough. Earth had entered a stage of early alert. This was something that had not happened in decades. Inside one of the major defense centers, a worker arrived for his shift, rubbing his sleepy eyes. He wasn't expecting anything unusual, but the moment he stepped inside, he noticed a strange tension in the air. Officers who usually joked around were suddenly quiet. Engineers who normally chatted while checking systems were moving quickly and silently. Everyone seemed to be doing something important, but no one wanted to explain why. He finally asked a senior officer, and the officer simply said, "Just follow protocol. No questions." His voice carried the kind of seriousness that makes a person's heart beat faster. The worker nodded and went to his station. But he couldn't shake off the feeling that something enormous was happening, something the rest of the world wasn't being told yet. Across Earth, similar scenes played out. Scientists in remote labs received instructions to recheck old systems that had been powered down for years. Some of them were surprised to even hear those systems mentioned again. These were programs built long ago, back when humanity feared they might one day face a threat from the stars. Over time, people had grown hopeful and relaxed, assuming such fears were unnecessary. Now those systems were being activated again, and nobody dared to ask why. In the border stations near the solar boundary, patrol officers noticed sudden changes in their schedules. Extra shifts were added, and long-distance scanners were recalibrated. The officers were told that the early alert mode was only precautionary. But the look in their commanding officer's eyes told a different story. Something was wrong. Something big. Meanwhile, Earth's leaders gathered once again in a smaller, more private meeting room. This time, there were fewer people present, only the most trusted advisors and key decision-makers. The rest of the government knew something serious was happening. But only this small circle knew the truth. About the Envoy, the room was dimly lit. Long shadows stretched across the table as the leaders sat silently. each waiting for someone else to speak first. Finally, one of them leaned forward and said, "If the Council hid this from us, we have no idea what else they might be hiding." Another leader nodded slowly. "We cannot trust any information coming from them right now." A third leader sighed. "And we cannot trust silence either." They all knew what that meant. Silence could be a sign of guilt. Silence could be a warning. Silence could be the beginning of something much darker. Earth needed information, not from the Council, not from rumors, but from its own eyes and ears. So the first major order issued that morning instructed Earth's long-range observation network to double its coverage. Drones that usually patrolled only nearby space were sent farther out. Old satellites that were gathering dust in orbital storage were reactivated and repositioned. Even private research stations were asked to contribute sensor data without asking questions. The idea was simple. If the Council or any allied species made a sudden move, Earth wanted to see it before it happened. While all this preparation was happening in complete secrecy, normal life on Earth continued. Children went to school, unaware of the dangers surrounding their world. People stood in lines at bus stations, checked their phones, laughed with friends, and complained about everyday things. They had no idea that their leaders were working through the night to protect them from something they could not yet understand. In one small town, an elderly man brewed his morning tea while listening to the news. Nothing unusual was reported. No strange alerts, no unusual events. It was as if the galaxy outside Earth didn't exist. And perhaps that was necessary for now. Earth needed time before telling its people the truth. But even without official information, some people sensed a shift in the world's mood. A few scientists noticed sudden changes in energy consumption at government facilities. Some military families noticed that loved ones were called back to duty sooner than expected. Journalists picked up whispers about strange activity in space, though they had no solid evidence to publish anything. People felt something changing, but couldn't explain what it was. Back inside the secure meeting room, Earth's leaders studied the Envoy's recording once again. This time, they watched it not with shock, but with sharp attention. They were looking for patterns, for signs, for anything that might give them a clue. One advisor noticed that several council members in the background seemed frightened, not angry, not hostile, but genuinely scared. Another pointed out a strange alarm sound in the distance. Someone else paused the video and highlighted a shadow moving in the corner. The more they studied it, the more questions appeared. What scared the council members? What caused the sudden alarm? Who moved in the background? And why were they running? What triggered the chaos? And the biggest question, did the Envoy discover something he shouldn't have? Earth's leaders didn't know the answers, but they knew one thing. The Council wasn't telling them the truth. And if the truth was hidden, it was likely because it threatened someone powerful. By mid-afternoon, Earth's early alert systems were fully active. But no one outside the classified circle recognized the significance. It was the calmest kind of preparation: quiet checks, silent calibrations, whispered instructions. Unlike movies that show loud alarms and flashing lights, real preparation happened softly, without drawing attention. In a remote research outpost near the asteroid belt, a team of engineers worked on a system that hadn't been touched for nearly 10 years. One of them asked his supervisor, "Do you know why this system is being reopened?" The supervisor shook his head. "Orders from above," he said quietly. "But my guess? Something big is coming." Another engineer stopped working for a moment. "Do you think it's about the Council?" The supervisor didn't answer. He simply continued working, but the silence itself was an answer. The people at the outpost didn't know the story behind the Envoy's disappearance, but they felt the tension. Nobody complained. Nobody questioned. They just worked, understanding the seriousness from the tone of every order they received. Meanwhile, In a high orbit above Earth, crews aboard a surveillance station monitored space with deep focus. One officer paused while reviewing sensor logs and whispered, "They're not telling us everything." His partner looked at him and replied, "We're not supposed to know. We're just supposed to be ready." Earth's readiness spread slowly, like a ripple moving across still water. No panic, no chaos, just a deep sense of responsibility. Back on the ground, Earth's leaders reviewed reports from different sectors. Everything was moving according to plan. The early alert posture was working smoothly. But still, they felt uneasy. Preparation was important, but preparation alone was not enough. They needed strategy. They needed clarity. A senior strategist finally spoke. "We must assume the Council will contact us. Not today, but soon. And they will not tell us the truth. They will offer explanations, excuses, or half-truths. We must not react emotionally. We must respond with logic, strength, and control." Another leader agreed. "If we appear weak, they will take advantage. If we appear angry, they will justify their actions. But if we appear calm and prepared, they will fear the consequences of their own mistakes." Earth wasn't preparing to attack. Earth was preparing to survive. As night fell again over the planet, the leaders finally ended their second emergency session. They walked out into the cool night air, each carrying an invisible burden on their shoulders. One of them looked up at the dark sky filled with stars and whispered to himself, "We will not be caught unprepared again." The stars above Earth twinkled gently, unaware of the tension between worlds. The galaxy was vast, filled with secrets and dangers humans had not yet seen. But Earth, once hopeful and trusting, was now becoming something else: watchful, cautious, ready. In the darkness of space, unseen by human eyes, small sensors blinked to life. Old systems hummed again. Defenses slept lightly, waiting for the slightest change. Earth was silent, but it was no longer unaware. The preparations had begun, and there was no turning back. The silence that followed felt heavier than the night itself. After leaving the abandoned factory, the person walked slowly down the empty road, trying to understand everything that had happened. Even though the air was cold, sweat still clung to their hands. The voice they heard in the factory kept repeating inside their mind. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. But it felt too real, too focused, as if it had been waiting only for them. They kept replaying the moment again and again, those strange symbols on the walls, the sudden shift in the air, and that whisper calling their name. Leaving the place hadn't stopped the fear. If anything, the fear had followed them like a shadow that refused to leave. By the time they reached the small camp they had set up earlier in the forest, the sun was just touching the edge of the sky. A soft orange glow spread slowly, giving a bit of comfort. They sat down on a fallen log, rubbing their arms as if trying to wipe away the memory. They took deep breaths, trying to calm their racing heart. But one thought kept returning. Nothing in the factory happened by accident. The voice, the door opening, the faint feeling of being watched, something wanted them to find that place. Something wanted them to hear that message. They tried to shake off the thought and decided to eat something. They took out a small packet of biscuits from their bag and started eating slowly. But the food tasted like nothing. Their mind couldn't stop thinking. The voice had mentioned a word, unfinished. That word carried weight. What was unfinished? Why did it involve them? They stood up again after a few minutes, unable to sit still. The forest around them was waking up, birds calling, wind moving through the leaves, sunlight slowly spreading across the ground. The calm surroundings should have made everything feel normal. But inside, nothing felt normal anymore. They picked up the notebook they always carried and wrote down every detail they could remember from the factory. The symbols, the layout, the exact words of the voice, the feeling in the air. They filled page after page. It helped a little. Writing made the chaos inside feel slightly organized. After finishing several pages, they looked back at the notes. Something strange stood out. One of the symbols they described looked like the same shape they had once seen in an old book at home many years ago. Back then, they had thought it was just some artistic design. But now it didn't seem random anymore. The realization gave them a new kind of nervous energy. Was there a connection between the factory and something from their past? They couldn't be sure, but the possibility made their heart beat faster. They packed their things and decided to return home. They needed that old book. They needed answers. The journey back took a few hours. The road was long and traffic was light, which gave them too much time to think. Every small sound made them jump. Every shadow made them check their surroundings. They kept feeling as if someone was watching from a distance, though there was no one in sight. By the time they reached their home, the sky was fully bright. They unlocked the door quietly, even though there was no reason to be quiet. Habit, maybe. Or maybe fear had made them extra cautious. Inside the house, everything looked normal, untouched. They went straight to the shelf where old books were kept. Their hands moved quickly, searching through dusty covers, old notebooks, forgotten papers. After a few minutes, they found it a thick, dark book they hadn't touched in years. They sat on the floor and flipped through the pages. Most of it was worn and faded, filled with drawings and information collected by someone in their family long ago. And then they saw it. The symbol. Exactly the same shape. A curve meeting a line, forming a shape that almost felt like an eye. Their breath caught in their throat. They turned the page. There was a short description written beneath the symbol. Even though the writing was old and slightly smudged, they could still read it. A mark left behind by those who guarded forgotten places. Their fingers froze on the page. Guarded? Forgotten places? The abandoned factory. Was it one of those places? They closed the book slowly, trying to stop their thoughts from spiraling. This wasn't just a random factory. It wasn't just an old building with strange drawings. Someone had once tried to protect whatever secrets it held. And now, somehow, they had stepped into it. They leaned back against the wall and covered their face with their hands. The situation was getting bigger than they had imagined. They had wanted a quiet exploration trip, something to distract their mind. Instead, they had stepped into a hidden piece of history that seemed connected to them personally. After a long moment, they forced themselves to stand. They couldn't sit and worry forever. They needed more answers. They needed to know what these forgotten places were, and why there was a connection to their family. They kept searching through the book, hoping for more pages, more symbols, more clues. But most of the book didn't relate to the symbol. It was only mentioned once. That frustrated them even more. One small clue wasn't enough. They sighed and closed the book. Their eyes drifted to the notebook, where they had written everything from the factory. Suddenly, a thought struck them. Maybe there were more places like the factory abandoned areas with the same symbols. If that was true, then maybe other people had also encountered the same mystery. They powered on their old laptop and searched online for abandoned sites with similar markings. The internet was full of rumors, stories, images, but none matched perfectly. Some were close, though. A few pictures of old structures in distant areas had similar shapes carved or painted on the walls. This meant one thing. The symbol wasn't isolated. It belonged to something bigger. They leaned closer to the screen. One of the pictures was interesting. It showed a building with the symbol faintly scratched near a doorway. The location tag was a remote mountain region. Another image from a different website showed a tunnel entrance with almost the same symbol. They noted everything down. Coordinates, regions, comments, even the usernames of people who posted those pictures. They didn't know what they were searching for yet, But they knew they couldn't stop. A soft knock on their door made them jump. They stood still for a moment. No one usually came unannounced. Their heart pounded as they walked to the door and opened it carefully. It was just the neighbor, holding a small package. They smiled and said the package had been delivered by mistake. The person thanked them politely and closed the door. Just a harmless interaction. But in their current state of mind, even normal things felt heavy. They placed the package on a table and continued researching. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky and eventually disappeared, leaving the room dim. They turned on a small lamp and kept working. But the deeper they looked, the clearer one thing became. Every place with that symbol had one thing in common. No one knew their full history. They were abandoned without explanation. No records existed. People avoided those locations. It was as if they were meant to be forgotten. Suddenly, they remembered the voice from the factory. That calm whisper. Not finished. Maybe the reason the symbol kept appearing was because something was incomplete. Maybe the places were connected, forming a trail that someone was supposed to follow. And for reasons they didn't understand yet, the trail had somehow chosen them. They pushed the laptop aside and took a deep breath. The fear was still there, but now a new feeling mixed with it determination. They were afraid of the unknown, but they were even more afraid of walking away and staying confused forever. They decided they would return to the factory one more time, not to explore blindly, but to look carefully, to understand what they had missed. But before that, they needed rest. Their mind felt exhausted, their eyes heavy. They lay down on their bed, trying to relax. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time they closed their eyes, flashes of the factory appeared, the broken floor, the symbols, the faint echo of that voice. Still, after a long struggle, exhaustion finally took over. In the middle of the night, a sound woke them up. A soft, distant hum. It wasn't coming from the outside. It was coming from inside the house. They sat up slowly, half awake, half unsure if it was just their imagination. The hum grew slightly louder. Calm, steady, rhythmic. Like something calling again. They stood up, heart pounding. The sound was coming from the old book. They took a step toward it. The hum continued. And slowly, the same symbol on the book's page seemed to shine under the dim lamp. They froze in place. The connection they feared was real. In whatever had started in the factory wasn't finished at all. The humming sound grew stronger, vibrating softly through the room as if the walls themselves were breathing. They took one slow step toward the table, eyes fixed on the old book. It looked exactly the same as before, worn, dusty. Old, but now the symbol on its page seemed to glow faintly, like a hidden light was waking up from beneath the paper. They stopped right in front of the table, their hand hovering uncertainly in the air. For a moment, they didn't know whether to touch the book or back away from it. Part of them wanted to run out of the room and pretend none of this was happening. But another part, the stronger part, felt drawn to it, as if something inside them knew this moment was important. They slowly placed their fingers on the edge of the book. Instantly, the humming softened, almost like it recognized their touch. Their heart thumped so loudly, it felt like it filled the entire room. They carefully lifted the book, holding it with both hands as the faint glow pulsed gently under their fingers. The room felt warmer, the air heavier. It wasn't scary, just intense. Like the moment before a storm breaks. They flipped the page slowly, but the glow didn't follow. It stayed only on the page where the symbol was printed. That made them pause. Maybe this page was the key. Maybe this symbol wasn't just decoration or a forgotten marking. Maybe it was meant to activate just like it did now. They touched the symbol lightly with the tip of their finger. The humming sound changed. Instead of a single long tone, it broke into short vibrations like tiny pulses of sound. They pulled their hand away quickly, startled, but the pulses continued. What is happening? They whispered without meaning to. The book, of course, didn't answer. The pulses stopped after a few seconds, and the room fell silent again. The glow faded slowly, leaving the symbol looking exactly the way it had before, flat ink on old paper. For a moment, it made them wonder if everything they saw was real, or just a trick of their tired mind. But the humming, they had felt that in their bones. That wasn't imagination. They placed the book gently back on the table and took a deep breath. If the symbol had reacted now, here, away from the factory, then there had to be a deeper connection between the book and that place. Something had triggered it. Something they brought back with them, maybe the memory, maybe the experience, or maybe something still unseen. They sat down on the edge of the bed and tried to calm their breathing. They knew they couldn't ignore this anymore. If something mysterious had chosen to reveal itself, then pretending it didn't happen wouldn't make it go away. They needed to understand it. They needed to follow it. The first thing they decided was to go back to the factory, not just for a quick look, but to explore properly. The last time they were there, they were scared and unprepared. This time would be different. This time, they would go with a clear mind, with tools, with notes, with more courage than before. The thought made them nervous, but it also brought a sense of purpose. Something had been waiting in that factory for a long time, and it had reached out to them. Now they needed to know why. They stood up and packed their backpack again. A flashlight, a small camera, extra batteries, a bottle of water, and of course, the notebook. They hesitated for a moment before placing the old book inside as well, wrapped carefully so it wouldn't get damaged. If the symbol reacted once, it might react again when they were near the place it belonged to Dot. By the time everything was ready, the first signs of morning were appearing outside. A faint silver light peeked through the curtains. They walked to the window and stared outside. The sky was slowly changing. Birds were beginning to chirp. The world outside looked calm and peaceful, completely opposite to what they felt inside. They stepped out of the house, locked the door, and took a deep breath of the cool morning air. The road was empty. Only a few leaves rustled in the soft breeze. They started walking toward the bus stop, feeling a strange combination of fear and excitement. The journey back to the factory felt longer than before. Every turn, every empty field, every distant sound made them think about what they had experienced. But this time, there was a difference. They weren't trying to run away from the memory. They were heading straight toward it, ready to face whatever waited inside the old walls. When they reached the outskirts of the forest, the sun had risen fully, casting warm light across the trees. The path toward the factory felt familiar now. They walked slowly, listening to the crunch of leaves under their shoes. It felt strange how the forest, which had felt welcoming before, now seemed to be watching them silently. The factory appeared ahead, tall and lonely, with broken windows and rusted doors. Even from a distance, the building felt different today, more awake, more aware of their presence. They swallowed hard and approached cautiously, every step echoing inside their mind. They reached the main door and pushed it gently. It opened with the same soft creak as last time. The air inside felt cool, almost cold. They stepped in and stood still for a moment, letting their eyes adjust to the dim light. The silence inside was deeper than before. They walked slowly toward the room where they had first heard the voice. Their heartbeat quickened as they reached the doorway. Nothing seemed out of place. The cracked floor, the empty corners, the faded symbol on the wall. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet, the feeling was different. The room didn't feel abandoned anymore. They knelt down in front of the symbol painted on the wall. The paint was old and cracked, but the shape still held something powerful in it. They reached into their bag and pulled out the book. Opening it to the glowing symbol, felt like unlocking a door inside their mind. They held the book close to the wall symbol and waited. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the air in the room began to shift. A faint pressure, like the atmosphere, thickened around them. The symbol on the wall didn't glow, but something under the surface of the wall seemed to tremble. Like something was waking up from a long sleep, the person stepped back slightly, their breath catching in their throat. A soft sound filled the room. Not the whisper from last time. This sound was more like a heartbeat, slow, steady, rhythmic, echoing from inside the walls. They tightened their grip on the book. Suddenly, the old symbol on the wall cracked lightly, a tiny line forming through it. They gasped and took another step back. The crack widened just a little, revealing a faint outline of something behind the wall. They realized this wasn't just a marking. It was a cover. The symbol was hiding something. Their hands shook as they slowly reached forward and touched the wall. The surface felt warm, as if something alive was beneath it. They pressed lightly, and to their surprise, a small piece of the wall piece slid inward like a hidden button. The heartbeat-like sound stopped instantly. Then the entire wall shifted. A thin stone panel moved aside with a soft grinding sound, revealing a narrow, dark passage behind the wall. They stared in complete disbelief. For a long moment, they couldn't move. They could barely breathe. The hidden passage looked old, untouched for decades, maybe even longer. Dust floated in the air like tiny stars. The scent of earth and old stone drifted out slowly. The person swallowed hard. Their whole body was shaking, now not only from fear, but also from pure astonishment. All the pieces suddenly made sense. The glowing symbol, the humming, the old book, the forgotten places, it all led to this hidden path. They leaned into the opening carefully, shining their flashlight into the passage. The beam of light spread across stone walls, showing nothing dangerous, nothing threatening, just a long, narrow corridor that seemed to lead deeper into the building. They looked back at the room for a moment, as if expecting someone to appear behind them. But the room remained silent and empty. They turned toward the passage again and took a deep breath. This was the moment everything had been pushing them toward. Every answer, every truth, every secret was waiting on the other side of that darkness. And with a final steadying breath, they stepped inside. The passage felt colder than the rest of the factory, as if the air inside had been untouched for many years. Their footsteps echoed softly, mixing with the faint sound of their own breathing. The flashlight beam shook slightly in their hand. They were trying to stay calm, but their heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might echo off the stone walls. The narrow corridor stretched ahead, turning slightly to the right, as though guiding them deeper into a forgotten place. Dust floated through the light like tiny drifting sparks. The air smelled different-year-old, heavy, filled with the scent of stone and trapped time. They walked slowly, afraid to make too much noise. The silence inside the passage didn't feel empty. It felt watchful, like the walls were listening. Every few steps, they glanced back at the opening behind them. The room outside was still visible, a distant rectangle of pale light. Knowing it was there brought a small sense of safety. But as they walked further, that opening grew smaller and smaller until it finally disappeared around the curve. Now they were surrounded only by stone, and darkness. Their throat tightened for a moment. A quiet thought whispered in their mind. What if going back isn't possible anymore? What if something closes behind me? They shook the thought away and forced themselves to keep walking. The corridor widened a little after a few more steps. The walls became smoother, almost polished. It was strange this part didn't look like a random factory space. It looked planned, crafted for a purpose. The stone had patterns carved into it, faint lines and curves that formed shapes they didn't recognize. They touched one carving lightly with their fingertips. The stone was cool, but the lines felt almost warm, as if someone had carved them not long ago, even though they clearly belonged to an older time. The flashlight beam caught something ahead, a wooden door. Not a modern industrial door, but an old one, heavy, dark, with metal hinges that were rusted but still intact. Dust coated the surface, yet the door seemed untouched for years. They stopped a few steps away from it and listened. Nothing. Just stillness. They took a deep breath, reached out, and pushed it gently. The door didn't budge. They pushed harder, and this time it creaked softly. The sound echoed faintly through the passageway. They glanced behind them again, half expecting someone or something to respond to the sound. But the corridor remained as silent as before. They placed both hands on the door and pushed with more force. It resisted for a moment, then slowly moved inward. Revealing a dark space beyond it, they lifted the flashlight higher. A room came into view, large, circular, and surprisingly clean compared to the rest of the factory. The floor was smooth stone, and the walls curved gently around the space. There were no broken pieces, no dirt, no signs of decay. It felt untouched, almost preserved. In the center of the room stood a small raised platform made of stone, and on top of the platform lay an object covered by a thick layer of cloth. Their breath caught. They stepped inside cautiously, almost on tiptoe, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. The room felt different from everywhere else. The air was warmer, almost comforting. It was quiet, but not empty. It felt like someone had been here long ago, waiting for something or someone to return. They approached the platform slowly. Every step felt heavier, not because of fear, but because of the weight of the moment. It felt important. Something was waiting beneath that cloth. Something connected to the symbol. Something connected to the book. Something connected to them. Their fingers trembled slightly as they reached out and lifted the cloth. Underneath, it was a smooth stone tablet with a symbol carved into it. Their eyes widened. The symbol was the same one that had glowed in their book. The same shape. The same curves. But this one was larger, more detailed, more powerful looking. They touched the stone lightly. The moment their skin made contact, a faint vibration passed through the room. Not strong, just a whisper of movement, like the stone was waking up. The symbol pulsed with a soft light, faint at first, then slowly growing brighter. They stepped back in surprise, their heart racing. The glow filled the room, spreading across the walls in gentle waves of light. The carvings on the corridor suddenly made sense. They matched the patterns now, lighting up around them. The room wasn't just a hidden space. It was a chamber built for this symbol, the same symbol that had reacted to them. The same symbol that had led them. Here, they held the old book close to their chest and watched as the light spread. The chamber didn't look scary. It didn't feel dangerous. Instead, it felt welcoming, almost like it had been waiting for someone to come back and wake it up. Their breathing slowed, and for the first time in days, the fear inside them softened. They walked closer to the platform and placed the book beside the tablet. The glowing symbol in the room and the carved symbol in the book matched perfectly, like pieces of a puzzle finally coming together. The light grew brighter for a moment, then settled into a warm, steady glow. They felt something shift deep inside themselves. A thought, a realization rising slowly, like a memory they didn't know they had. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't a message. It was more like a feeling, a deep understanding forming quietly. This place wasn't meant to harm anyone. It wasn't hiding something dangerous. It was protecting something, keeping it safe until the right person found it. They placed their hand on the stone tablet again, calmer this time. The warm glow softened under their touch. They gently traced the lines of the symbol, feeling connected to it in a way they couldn't explain. All the fear that had followed them since the first moment in the factory began to fade. All the confusion, the tension, the unanswered questions, they didn't disappear completely, but they finally felt manageable. They finally felt like they were standing on the path toward understanding Dot after a long moment. They stepped away from the platform and looked around the chamber again. Now that the room was lit by the symbol's glow, they noticed details they hadn't seen before. Small carvings around the walls, smooth grooves in the floor that formed lines leading to the center, patterns that looked like maps or constellations or messages left in stone. A part of them wanted to stay here for hours, days even, trying to read every marking and learn every hidden story carved into these walls. But another part knew it was time to leave. Not because they were done, but because this discovery was only the beginning. There was more to uncover, more to understand, more pieces waiting to be found. They lifted the book, wrapped the cloth around the tablet again to keep it safe, and walked slowly toward the door. The glow dimmed as they stepped away, not fading completely, but lowering itself gently, like a lantern being turned down. They paused at the doorway and looked back one last time. The room felt peaceful now, calm, as if it was silently acknowledging them, silently thanking them for finding it. They smiled softly, a small, quiet smile, then stepped out into the corridor. The passage felt less cold now, less heavy. Even the darkness didn't seem as frightening as before. They walked with steady steps, flashlight guiding the way, heart lighter than when they had entered. When they reached the entrance where the wall had opened, they paused, expecting it to be closed. But the opening was still there, waiting patiently. They stepped out into the room, and the stone panels slowly began to slide shut behind them, sealing the passage once more. They watched it close completely. No glow, no sound, just a smooth movement, then silence. The hidden chamber was locked again, safe, protected, waiting. They stood in the center of the room for a long time, holding the book. Everything felt different now. The factory didn't feel threatening anymore. The air didn't feel heavy. The whispers were gone. The fear had faded. They walked out of the factory slowly, sunlight warming their face as they stepped outside. The world looked brighter, the sky clearer. The forest felt alive in a comforting way. Dot, as they walked back along the forest path, they knew one thing for certain. Their journey wasn't ending here. Dot, it was just beginning. Dot, and whatever truth lay behind the symbol, whatever connection they had to it, they were ready to follow it. Dot, step by step, wherever it led.